Speaker.
Rahui Katini.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Māori Party have to admit to being really open when we came to this particular bill to the possibility that we could either support it or oppose it, the proposal to force unions to hold secret ballots on strike action. We start from the position that the Transport and Industrial Relations Committee has recommended it be passed with amendments such as the requirement for a union to hold a secret ballot before a strike and unlawful strikes or lockouts where in contravention of the above. The intention of the bill is very straightforward. The Employment Relations Workers' Secret Ballot for Strikes Bill would require unions to hold a secret ballot for their members when voting on strike action. The Council of Trade Unions has signalled its support in principle for the bill, their Secretary Peter Conway saying it largely reflects current practice. According to Andrew Little, secret ballots are already a core component of EPMU's rules, and in his view he presumed that some 95% of the unions were the same. Other big unions like the 14,000 member Post-Primary Teachers Association are among those that already hold secret ballots. Despite the status quo, in CTU's submission to the Select Committee, they called the bill fundamentally unfair and practically flawed, concluding that the bill is little more than a cheap stunt and a poorly disguised attack on workers seeking to exercise their collective right to organise. If that's support in principle, I'd be fascinated to see what their opposition looks like. But to be fair, the fact that the CTU, a union which in its Māori arm of Te Kauai Kaimahi represents approximately 60,000 Māori workers, really challenged us in our thinking about whether we should support or oppose this bill. While the CTU said that they would support the bill, the Unite union promoted much the same message but had reached the decision that they should vote against the bill. Duncan Allen, a management representative from Unite, stated that the bill is unnecessary, it will stifle union members' ability to take strike action, it is prejudiced against employees, and it breaches the Employment Relations Act. Mr Allen advised the committee that the bill breached the Act in two ways. It contravenes the principle of acknowledging and addressing the inherent inequality of power in employment relationships. It was inconsistent with the move to reduce the need for judicial intervention. And when we went to the National Distribution Union, the advice was absolutely clear-cut. Do not support this bill. Mr Speaker, the contrary positions of these three leading union organisations leaves us in a quandary as to whether this bill has the appropriate balance. On one hand, we must ask, is it our business to interfere in the practices that unions seek to uphold? In Aotearoa, union membership is voluntary, and as such we believe that unions should be free to run their own organisations according to their own agreed rules. On the other hand, we could support secret ballots for strikes as it merely represents the status quo, current practices amongst unions. This question of balance deserves a little more thought. For while this bill focuses on the opportunities for workers to be involved in strike action, what it could have done, and didn't, was require employers to follow democratic procedures, including a secret ballot of shareholders prior to a lockout. CTU President Helen Kelly came out publicly and said that the bill fails to put the same onus on employers to ratify lockout actions which have been used several times recently to force workers into accepting terms and conditions they do not want. That's right, the CTU, that's the union that's supporting this bill. One of the key issues that the National Distribution Union raised as a concern was the fact that actually there isn't a demonstrated pattern of unions engaging in strike action without a democratic mandate. It's simply not part of the worker history. What this does, therefore, is to provide a solution for an issue which doesn't actually emerge from an identified problem. What is even more fascinating from a party which is supposedly opposed to nanny state intervention is that this bill imposes another level of bureaucracy to the employment legislation paperwork. So it starts from a dubious base, introduces a laborious level of accountability onto unions and then produces a process by which the validity of legitimate votes in favour of strike action can be challenged. But the issue which has made us the most concerned is the claims from various unions that this legislation unfairly and disproportionately impacts on low-income New Zealanders. And it makes for a fairly dismal context to recall that in New Zealand income survey results for the June 2010 quarter showed income had decreased since the June 2009 quarter. Median income, weekly income for all people decreased to $529 compared with the June 2009 quarter figure of $538 and the June 2008 quarter figure of $536. Why would we intentionally want to support legislation which the unions tell us could be disadvantageous for low-income workers when we could instead be putting our efforts into far more worthwhile projects such as raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour? Mr. Speaker, our priority in employment legislation is that we give due consideration to initiatives which enhance labour relations rather than threaten to impact negatively on one side and advantage the other. The Māori Party promotes a framework for labour relations which is mutually beneficial to the collective, which encourages reciprocity and active participation on both sides of the employment continuum. We support people working together, exemplary employment standards and a respectful environment which is both worker-friendly and avoids undue compliance costs for employers. For all these reasons, we have given this bill serious and due consideration, and in the final estimation we come down more clearly in favour of the unions who have shared their concerns around the adverse impact on low-income workers. We therefore are opposed to this bill.